Welcome to another edition of How Pop Music Works Live. Today we're talking about the theme song for The Best There Is, The Best There Was, and The Best There Ever Will Be, the excellence of execution, the Hitman, Bret Hart. Now there's a couple versions of this theme. We'll start with the original version, which was written and recorded by the great Jimmy, the Mouth of the South Hart. I've heard both versions of this song referred to as Hart Attack, but supposedly there's an old interview where the original version is called Road to Destruction. For those of us who grew up playing the LJN wrestling games, WWF Superstars, Wrestling Challenge, Royal Rumble, this original version is the one they used for the chiptune arrangements. Okay, so we're in 4/4 in this, in the key of E minor with a sort of motoric beat on the kick and the snare as the main rhythm. So like... Over that, we have the bass, in this case playing this all on the piano, playing eighth notes on the tonic, E. This never changes, it goes throughout the whole song. Okay, over that, we have chugging E5 power chords, also very kind of driving hard rock, like chung 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 chung. They also never change, which means that the whole song is effectively taking place over one tonic chord, with a major exception that we'll talk about when we get there. So now there's two sections that alternate back and forth. Our first section A is set entirely over those E5 tonic chords. On top of that, we have one riff that gets played over and over again with a little variation as to whether there's one or two notes at the end. And this is it. Okay, let's put that with the combination to kind of the bass and the guitar in left hand here. Okay, so we hear that 8 times, and that's the basis of the main section of the song. I think it's what a lot of people remember, although the theme's not that long, and it's pretty memorable either way. And there's usually a fill halfway through there, so there's like... something like that. Okay, well, then if we have that's our A section, our next section is the B section, which adds a nice bit of drama, changes things up. And the reason it's interesting is because on its face, it sounds like we have another chord and we have two root position chords in the B section. So we have this E minor, D major, so that's 1 and 7 in the key of E minor. And then we go. Here's the thing though, if you listen to the bass and the rhythm guitar on the recording, they never change even when the top chord changes. So what we actually have is this E minor and then D major over this E5 on the bottom. It's a very cool, very metal sound. And it sounds huge because we don't have a separate melody here. The melody is the top notes of the chords. Ooh. And then after that, kind of over the chug, we have this 16th note sequence that if you hear the video games, they more or less reproduce this exactly, especially the Sega Genesis version. And that's because it sounds like it's being played on a DX7 FM synthesizer or something very similar. So it goes top notes of the E minor pentatonic here. Over the riff here. Then we repeat the B section, the B, that whole thing again. There we go. Also, I just noticed that I left this key signature in A flat major the whole time. There should be an E minor, but I'm not changing it, so you're just going to have to read the accidentals and listen to what I was saying. Anyway, so that is the original version of Road to Destruction or Heart Attack, depending on what you refer to it to, that was heard in WWF, later WWE, in the mid 80s. A rare memorable one that was like I said, a Jimmy Hart composition and not a Jim Johnson composition, who's known for a lot of the other tunes from that era. Well, in the second version, oh, by the way, and that would repeat that's the whole piece. Then we just go back to the A section, then the B section, and really that just looped with a little bit, but very little variation for usually 2 or 3 minutes, however long they needed to get Bret in and then out of the ring, respectively. So there's a second version in 1994 that some people remember more fondly, and I think it's the one that you hear played when you hear an official studio recording of Bret's theme from that era nowadays. And it's the one that's officially called Hart Attack. And most of it is different just because, from what it sounds like, it's a complete re-recording. The guitars are a bit cleaner, the drums are a bit cleaner. And it has a lot more lead guitar as opposed to just kind of like the rhythm and melody parts that we hear in the original. Like it opens with this big kind of like squeal up to, or even like on the top note of that E minor pentatonic, and then so all that's the same. The two big differences are the variations we hear in the A melody as part of the arrangement and what happens after the big chords in the B section. So in 1994 Heart Attack, the A riff has many more variations, and a bunch of them actually have a pickup down at B here instead of being on E, G, and D. So, you know what? I'm going to take a second here because this is a live recording, so we're just going to switch that over to the proper key signature for E minor here. Okay, so the last few minutes of this will be in the correct key signature at least. And so what we have here is instead of do 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 do, we have boo boo do 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 boo do 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 boo do 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 boo do 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 do. Stuff like that, just variations on. But we end up in the same place either way, and the only real difference is changing kind of like the order of that E and D getting repeated and having the pickup down here B on this B down here. Now the other difference is that B section, what happens after the chords, because the chords are the same, so we still have. And I'm not going to demonstrate it on here. I'd like need a cranked synth to do it. I need to actually like figure out what some of them are. But basically, after the chords, we have all these squealing E minor pentatonic like hair metal guitar licks. Like one's like something like that. And it's different every time, which is kind of cool because that's, you know, more variation than the original sequence, which just sounds like it's being looped in every time. But it's very different. It's the very weird thing is it's still 80s, but not quite as blatantly 80s as that just like programmed or looped DX7 sequence. But yeah, it makes it sound very different and more live, if nothing else. That was our lesson on Heart Attack. I hope you learned something from it, enjoyed that window into my childhood. If you want to support what I do, please like, subscribe, and comment, do all the things, and go check out my Patreon in the description below. Please also check out my original channel, How Pop Music Works, if you're not already a subscriber. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of someone else, and have a good day.